Hello everyone! As the Gwent expansion Master Mirror approaches, the first journey is coming to a close. The journey added a Battle Pass style feature into Gwent filled with incredible cosmetics and cool quests released weekly, as well as a great story chronicling the meeting of the Bard and the Witcher. The story shows the events from both characters' perspectives as they progress, split into 4 chapters. I'm going to read each of the chapters from both characters' perspectives so that you don't have to. I'm also going to give my opinion on what the next journey is going to be and the reasons that I think that. I hope that you enjoy. It's time for the conclusion. Chapter 4, Dandelion Wedding. This will be a wedding about which the groom, namely Dandelion, had just learned from his future wife. He also finally discovered her name, Cora. At least that much he ought to know before they got married. Cora, the poet repeated in his thoughts, quite pretty he deemed while trying to comfort himself, feeling the noose of happy ever after marriage tightening its grip around his neck. The wedding, to make it even more terrifying, was to take place today, in conjunction with the second day of the festival, which, as it turns out, was just one big wedding party. During it, Cora was to be married to the other guy. But a merchant, even a wealthy one, was not comparable to an aristocrat, sighed Julian Alfred Pancratz, Viscount de Lettenhove, better known as Dandelion. He could not recall when he had divulged his title. The noble poet could not even recollect having proposed, though he had a strong impression he never really did. Cora's previous fiancé had to be a nasty older man, stinking of fish or whatever goods he was known to trade, and he certainly wasn't very generous, having chosen a group wedding over a more pristine private ceremony. No wonder the poor girl was so quick to seek a more worthy and appropriate partner. Aristocrat instead of a greedy and decrepit man, how her parents will be pleased. The brothers will finally be calm, and the new would-be spouse will politely and quietly get out of the way. The perfect wedding! Dandelion hoped the news of the engagement had not yet spread, making it easier to call the whole thing off. Upon opening the door to leave the chamber, the mayor of Goulet appeared and showered the young couple with congratulations, swiftly burying the bard's short-lived aspirations. Passing servants could hardly conceal their crooked smiles while busily helping prepare them for their departure. However, waiting outside, to his dismay, stood a welcoming committee composed of Cora's 4 brothers, demonstratively massaging their knuckles. They graciously agreed not to coat the Viscount in tar and sawdust, not unlike a pork chop in egg and flour, so long as he kept his word and joined their family. They graciously offered to help protect the family castle, which is a Viscount they were expecting him to own. Dandelion swallowed hard. Where the hell was he supposed to conjure a castle from? In truth, it mattered not what these damn half-wits expected. He had no intention of sticking around long enough for these things to get that far. The real problem was, where the hell had his loot gone? The mayor proudly presented tables overflowing with food, surrounded by mercilessly fiddling second-rate musicians. At the far end stood a wedding gate built of flowers and ivy where oaths would soon be exchanged. Beyond, the main market square was being prepared for all the celebratory dancing to come. Dandelion straightened up, suddenly keenly interested in the officials' words. The ceremony was almost upon them. And Dandelion danced. He danced with all his vigour. Following Goulet's traditions, the groom was tasked with rescuing his blushing bride trapped within a densely dancing crowd. Only then could the wedding ceremony begin in earnest. The bard, rightfully so, saw this as his last opportunity to escape his predicament. Unfortunately, his soon-to-be brothers-in-law shared this viewpoint. They had preemptively blocked his likely escape route and were in the process of forcibly leading him towards their sister, Cora. Dandelion would not be so easily deterred. Participants all around were busily dancing and laughing as they carelessly bumped into one another. Fortunately, this was preventing him from reaching his bride. Lively music filled his ears as the world began spinning around him. Nevertheless, the bard found a rhythm to the madness and proceeded to dance his way out. He passed by the first of the brothers with a few well-timed sharp turns. He smirked, stomping on the second one, who had just happened to trip clumsily. The third he took by the hand, twisting it in a pirouette only to let it go at just the right moment for his opponent to lose his balance. The fourth proved to be the most difficult. Dandelion jumped right, jumped left, made a turn, yet the musclehead reacted to his movements like a mirror image. The poet, feeling desperate, decided to attempt a simple trick by taking a step back. The oaf also backed up, so Dandelion continued, until finally he just turned around and fled. As he disappeared behind the nearest stall, he heard Cora's desperate cry, but did not dare risk looking back. Now was his chance to be free, yet first the poet had to find his precious loot. Thus he began wandering the alleys of Goulet in search of the Witcher, feeling resentful and abandoned. In a move of desperation, he made his way to the stables, hoping that Geralt had not yet departed this foul city. He groaned miserably upon seeing the horse's absence, then knelt and bowed his head. The Witcher, his steed, and the bard's loots were surely long gone. Dandelion was once again all alone, stripped of his belongings and unfairly punished by fate. In the height of his despair, a shadow rose behind him. A shadow with a lute in one hand and reins in the other. A shadow with a voice hoarse from vodka, asking the bard to stand the fuck up. Dandelion turned, overjoyed at his newfound luck. He could sense that this was just the beginning of their journey together. And finally, Chapter 4 from Geralt's perspective. Funeral. There should be a funeral. Geralt was convinced of it, especially considering the joyful news he had heard from the market. Someone had already spread rumours of a misalliance between a certain young miss named Cora and the Viscount of Lettenhove. Was it the same young lady who, as if by chance, came across them in the middle of the night, yelling at Dandelion for the disgrace she had suffered? The bard, of course, quickly resorted to sweet lies, promising he would repay her for any harm done. When she refused to calm down, he flaunted a noble title, which was likely yet another lie. Nonetheless, young Cora immediately cheered up, promptly ending her accusations and threats to not only call upon her brothers, but the city guard as well. A poor threat, but they were particularly drunk and dim-witted at the time. So Dandelion went with her, leaving the Witcher his loot for safekeeping and assuring him he would return once the maiden had fallen asleep. Now Geralt had a strong inkling that it was Cora who had slipped out of bed to chat with peddlers and God only knows who else. Her family was likely already adjusting plans of the previously planned celebration, unaware that an impoverished artist was replacing a wealthy merchant. Geralt felt confident that the truth regarding the groom would inevitably be revealed. Her brothers will heat tar, and the would-be spouse will meet the executioner. Just a quick funeral. Geralt hoped that the funeral would not take place if he helped the bard escape. The Witcher did not hold the slightest doubt concerning the eventuality of Dandelion's escape attempt from his upcoming nuptials. So he went to the mayor's house, where he hoped to find the equally hungover poet, along with his blushing bride-to-be. At the gates of the estate, however, he saw familiar faces. A real wedding party led by the mayor himself. It seemed that the young bride had even appeased her brothers. Geralt preferred not to guess what she had promised them, preferring to remain as detached as possible. One evening of drunken bonding did not oblige him to rescue the poet, the Witcher reminded himself. Declarations made in such a state were not binding, he repeated, making a first step back towards the stables. But then Geralt remembered the loot hidden within his saddlebags. Sighing heavily, he turned back. The Witcher wasn't going to risk arrest by starting a fight to free Dandelion, but surely there was no harm in waiting around for some opportunity to aid him, was there? Unfortunately, both the bride and her brothers did not leave Dandelion's side for a moment. Meanwhile, the mayor played the role of a gracious host, showing his guests around the festival, explaining local rituals, entirely unaware of the tense situation. Geralt followed them at a distance, eavesdropping until it became clear when the bard would make his move. Geralt did not dance. At least, he avoided it as much as possible, since navigating the rabble before him required either timely jumps or forceful shoving. The Witcher again was looking for Dandelion, who was swallowed by the crowd as soon as the idiotic tradition began. Instead, he spotted a wealthy yet older-looking merchant, seeming at a loss regarding the actions of his distant fiancée. Devil only knows if she ever told the poor fool of his new intentions. Geralt pushed forward. Some of the dancing townsfolk tried to stop him, although without much effect. The music bellowed even louder, making any conversation impossible. Despite this madness, the Witcher finally managed to find within the crowd a distinct hat decorated with the feather of a heron, its owner to no surprise of the Witcher, was obscured by 4 familiar-looking thugs. Not wishing to waste a moment longer, Geralt shoved the first of the brothers with all of his weight deep into the crowd and away from Dandelion. He then smashed the second one, sending him to the ground, where he fell right under the poet's feet. He found himself holding the wrist of the third one while the bard performed some idiotic and pointless pirouettes. The Witcher ended this spectacle by kicking the ruffian's legs out from under him, sending him hurling onto his back. The fourth took seemingly forever to deal with, mainly due to Dandelion. The poet acted like a jester, trying to mislead his opponent before finally fleeing. The thug, one moment intent on taking the chase, suddenly turned towards the sound of the now screaming Cora. Her original suitor had embraced the poor girl possessively, with misery marking her lonely face as she scanned the crowd for one poetic saviour, who, of course, was nowhere to be seen at this point. Meanwhile, the Witcher, having had his fill of getting involved in the affairs of others, turned and made his way back to the stables. He smiled to himself as he entered, to the sight of the bard on the ground. Dandelion was kneeling dramatically, clearly unaware that if he simply glanced to the left, he would have seen his lute sticking out of Roach's saddlebags. So Geralt smiled, took out the musical instrument, and told the clumsy fool to compose himself, ending this miserable show. Sometime later, once on his saddle and well underway to the gates leaving Goulet, he glanced back at the bard, who now followed him. It seemed like Dandelion meant to journey with the Witcher, even to the edge of the world. Well, that is the end of the first journey. I had various thoughts about it as I read through it. I liked the progression of the way the writing worked. The first chapters I didn't enjoy as much because while the mirroring language was very obvious, it was a little too obvious, if that made sense, but it definitely improved as it progressed, and I really enjoyed the story. Now, originally when the journey came out, we were under the impression that there would obviously be more journeys, and that this journey would be a story, and then we'd get another one that would probably link in somehow. I think it's fair to say that the change over here that you can see, these numbers, halfway through the journey changed from each week being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way down to 12, into 4 chapters. I think the reason for this is that the second journey will likely follow on from the first directly, and the words at the end of chapter 4, as spoken by Dandelion, "This was just the beginning of their journey," ring very true. I expect the next journey to be Dandelion as the character skin, with Geralt as the other character. I think this story is far from done, and I get the feeling that journeying to the end of the world may just mean we cross paths with the Wild Hunt. That is the way I think it's going to go, guys. Let's see if I'm right. We haven't had any confirmation yet, as I'm recording this, whether the next journey is going to come out at the same time as Master Mirror or there's going to be a little break. I think we might get it at the same time. I certainly hope so. It would be really good if we can straight away jump back into this. But there is so much content coming in Gwent in the coming days, weeks and months that honestly we're going to have our hands full. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. During the Master Mirror expansion, I will also be releasing deck guides to go along with all of the meta changes created by the influx of new cards, as well as continuing the next journey story as and when it happens. Thank you very much, and I will catch you all soon. Bye guys.